Have you ever gotten into one of those arguments with a friend about whether a color is really blue or if it's actually green? Or, tried to figure out the exact number of hairs someone has to lose before you can call them bald? Well, it turns out this isn't just some weird quirk of how we talk. It's a really deep feature of how our brains are wired. And today, we are going to dive into the hidden genius behind it all. Seriously, just think about this for a second. Is it your 65th birthday, your 70th? Can you pinpoint the exact day, the exact moment where someone crosses over from not old to old? Of course you can't. It's impossible. And that impossibility, well, that's the key to this whole thing. So you've got words like tall, rich, soon, red. They all have these blurry, fuzzy edges. Now, you might think that's a flaw, right? That our language is just sloppy and imprecise. But what we're about to find out is that this blurriness, this vagueness, is actually one of its most powerful and sophisticated features. And this whole puzzle, it actually has a name. Philosophers and linguists, they call it the line drawing problem. And it makes sense, right? Because it's all about how hard it is to draw a sharp, definite line between something that is in a category and something that isn't. So what we're really talking about here is this idea of vagueness. It's this quality that these words have that just stops us from making a simple, clear-cut rule. There's no magical height where short just stops and tall suddenly begins. There's just this fuzzy area in between. And all those things living in that fuzzy zone, we call those borderline cases. Like a person who's not obviously young but not obviously old either. Or that color on the wall that's kind of sort of orange but also kind of sort of red. These cases are what break our simple yes or no way of thinking. Okay, so what happens when our neat little true or false logic just falls apart? Well, we end up in this really fascinating place, a place that logicians like to call the truth gap. Think about it. If I point to a person who's in that borderline old category, and I say, that person is old, is that statement true? Not really. But is it false? Not exactly. It's just floating somewhere in the middle. And that's a truth value gap. It's a situation where our traditional black and white logic just doesn't seem to cut it anymore. So how in the world have thinkers tried to solve this puzzle? Well, there are a few big competing ideas out there. You can kind of think of them as three different detectives, and each one has a totally unique method for investigating this mystery of the truth gap. All right, this chart lays out our three main suspects. You've got supervaluationism, which gives us a truth gap. Then there's subvaluationism, which leads to a truth glut. And finally, fuzzy logic, which just kind of throws out the whole idea of simple true or false. Let's break them down. First up, we have supervaluationism. The best way to think about this one is like a unanimous jury. For a statement like he is old to be true, every single possible, reasonable way you could define old has to agree. If even one of those definitions, one juror, says nope, the verdict is hung. The statement is neither true nor false. You've got a truth gap. Then we have subvaluationism, which is basically the exact opposite. It only needs a single yes vote. If any plausible definition makes the statement true, then the whole thing counts as true. But here's where it gets really weird. For a borderline case, this means it can be considered both true and false at the same time. This is what's called a truth value glut. It sounds strange, I know, but it is a logically consistent way of looking at it. And finally, there's fuzzy logic. And honestly, this one often feels the most intuitive. It basically says truth isn't an on-off light switch, it's a dimmer switch. A statement isn't just true or false. It can be, say, 50% true or 70% true. So that person who's borderline tall, maybe the statement they are tall has a truth value of, 0.6. So we've got these three really neat logical theories. But here's the plot twist. Your brain, it doesn't just pick one and stick with it. It cheats. It uses this messy, flexible, and incredibly powerful mix of strategies to navigate all this blurriness. It turns out our minds are just cognitive superstars when it comes to dealing with ambiguity. Research shows we're perfectly fine with truth gaps. We can even accept contradictions. We think in terms of probabilities, not certainties. And maybe most importantly, we let the context be our ultimate guide. This is wild. For example, experiments have shown that when you present someone with a borderline case, they're surprisingly okay with saying something like, well, yeah, he's tall, and he's also not tall. We just intuitively understand that both descriptions have some truth to them. That sounds an awful lot like that truth glut idea we were just talking about, doesn't it? And context is the real game changer here. The word tall has no fixed meaning on its own.
If you're at a first grader's birthday party, a 5-foot person is a giant. But if you're at the NBA draft, a 7-footer might just be considered tall. Our brain just instantly and totally effortlessly recalibrates the boundaries depending on the situation.
This is exactly what researchers mean when they talk about probabilistic reasoning. Your brain isn't trying to find the one true hidden line for the word tall. No, instead, it's constantly running this background calculation. Like, okay, given this specific conversation, this environment, these people, what's the most likely range of heights they mean when they say tall? So, what does this all add up to? It means we really need to stop looking at vagueness as some kind of problem to be solved. The blur isn't a bug in our cognitive software. It's a core feature. You could even say it's a stroke of genius. This is the big takeaway. This blurriness is precisely what makes our language so powerful and so incredibly efficient. If we had to be perfectly precise about everything all the time, our conversations would just grind to a halt. I mean, just think about it. First, it's efficient. Saying, let's meet up soon, is way faster than saying, let's meet in exactly 1 hour and 23 minutes. It's also flexible. The word tall works just as well for describing a child as it does for describing a skyscraper. And finally, it's just pragmatic. It's good enough for almost everything we need to do. It gets the job done without getting us bogged down in details that just don't matter. So I'll just leave you with this question to chew on. We spend so much time trying to be clear and precise. But is that always the best goal? Maybe the real art of communication isn't about getting rid of the blur. Maybe it's about understanding why it's there and learning how to use it.